the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Before I dive into what I saw on Saturday afternoon, what did you see? And how much did you want to text me when Vanderbilt went up 14-0, or even just the 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown for Vandy? How much did you have to restrain from being like, hey, like the eyes emoji text over to me?
I will say, sir, our relationship has changed through the years. You didn't text me at all during any of the Georgia Tech games. So, I'm not that kind of a dunk on people kind of fan, kick them while their team's down type of guy. So, since you respected me on Friday night, I was definitely not going to disrespect you. But I obviously text my brother. You see Tennessee is down 14-0? No, but yeah, I mean, that was insane that it got off to that quick of a start, especially the pick six. Or wait, was it a pick six?
No, there was not a pick six. It was a kickoff return.
Return for the touchdown. Yeah. And then the interception.
Yes.
It's like it's starting to set up exactly.
No, it was a fumble first. Dylan Sampson
fumbled.
The
first turnover?
Yes. And then Nico had an interception on a beep. It was basically a long punt.
Then that's what it was. And then so it's like it was already like setting up how the Alabama upset started, right? You got in that 14-0 lead. But I will say this is why I don't miss the noon slot. Like, not saying it's a permanent thing, Georgia Tech playing on Friday night, but I couldn't keep too many eyes on Tennessee Vanderbilt live because there are just so many great rivalry games happening, like Michigan, Ohio State, and South Carolina, Clemson. It's like it definitely took a back seat, but it's like in my two screens, I'm watching three games on two screens basically, so I'm keeping up with it, but it definitely sat on the back burner, especially once Tennessee started to take care of business. It's funny. I feel like that Dante Thornton. Was it the Oklahoma game that he had the long one that was like the same type play, like a 10-yard slant that he took 60 yards, 70 yards to the house?
It wasn't that. It was the Oklahoma game, but he did not go that far. I mean, this was an 86-yarder.
It was like a 50-yard touchdown or something. Yeah, it seemed a lot like that one in terms of the play and also just in terms of like the tone of the game.
That was the second one, though. He had won a 28-yarder first on his first slant. That was the second TD.
But that was the one that gave Tennessee the lead, though. The long one, wasn't it?
It gave him.
I was feeling like just the tone of the game changed once that 80-yard touchdown happened.
I do not think they were in the lead, but it did change the tone. If I remember correctly.
I got the box score. What is it? Thornton. 80, is it 86? So that made it 17-17.
It tied it up at 17. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and it felt different after that. And then Tennessee just kind of controlled the game from there. But yeah, it started to feel like some weird Vandy stuff. I was wondering if they had the magic still, but Tennessee took care of business. One of Nico's better games actually connected on a deep ball in this one, or at least got a pass interference. That's been my biggest criticism of him, and that's like what this Tennessee offense is like waiting to unleash. Is like Hendon Hooker was good for like one or two of those deep balls in a game, and that just made that offense so explosive. And with the way they run the ball this year, and Dylan Sampson with another great game, how did they not get Dylan Sampson a touchdown? Like that's just unacceptable. What did he have a record going, and he doesn't get a touchdown in this game? But 178 yards. If Nico's hitting those deep shots, this offense is like what people have waited for it to be. But this was a good performance offensively, but nothing like that makes you think, oh, now Tennessee's figured it out necessarily. But I don't know. It was an encouraging performance, I thought, for sure.
I think it actually is pretty close. It's closer to the offensive figure himself out, because what doesn't have to happen for this passing game, it's not like they need 5 to 6 deep bombs a game to look closer to 2022. They just need a couple. Like, that's the thing that you forget in 2022. It's not like Hendon Hooker was just only hitting deep shots. It's just the ones that he hit were memorable, like the Jalen Hyatt ones. Like, everyone remembers the Alabama game because that was just ridiculous what Jalen Hyatt was doing with his 5 TDs. Like, that's just going to be almost impossible to replicate. Like, that was just an all-time performance that I mean, it's just not the norm in college football. But against Kentucky, where you scheme Hyatt open a time or two and you have a couple big plays, that's the one where it is more replicable. And I look at this game as actually pretty close to like an all systems go Tennessee, because what I've said all year long with this offense, and again, it's so complicated because I think Dylan Sampson's been really good. Like you mentioned, he's rushed for 11 straight games with a touchdown, did not get in the end zone for this one, still had over 7 yards a carry. I mean, he breaks the single season rushing record for Tennessee. He already has the rushing touchdown record with 22. He breaks Travis Stevens' record in 2001 here. Tennessee has been the second best second half rushing team in FBS this season, and they're only behind Army in that stat. So like he's just right there all year long. He's been incredible when they needed him in the second half. 256 carries, nearly 1,500 yards. Like it's the best single season Tennessee running back season in the 21st century for the Vols, no question.
However, Walker committee not impressed.
No, look, that's another conversation for another day. But
can you tell me who the third finalist was?
Caleb Johnson.
No, Caleb Johnson and Ashton Jeanty were the justified ones. Who's the third one?
Amarion Hampton from North Carolina.
Great running back, but I don't know. I'm putting Dylan Sampson in there.
I would agree. But the thing is, Tennessee is going to continue to run the football well. Next year, if Dylan Sampson's off to the NFL, Tennessee's going to run the ball well. Tennessee ran the ball well last year with Jalen Wright. They ran the ball well with Tion Evans the first year. They ran the ball well with Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, and Dylan Sampson in 2022. Part of this offense and part of the scheme is like Tennessee is going to be able to run the ball. Like that has been a key portion of what this Tennessee offense does year in, year out under Heupel. Like that's going to continue to happen until it's proven otherwise. So that's not to discredit what Dylan Sampson's done, because Dylan Sampson's best quality this year is his consistency and his durability, which has been unbelievable all season long. But the reason that there is so much shine on Dylan Sampson this year is because the offense as a whole hasn't been clicking. Like it's like that thing where Miles Kitzman has been a great addition in the portal for Tennessee as a walk-on from Alabama. He's been huge for them. But if you look at the end of the game, like against Georgia, if he leads Tennessee in receiving yards, then you had a bad day. And that means the offense isn't doing what it needs to do. They can be contributors, but ultimately for this Tennessee offense to look anywhere close to 2022, that 2022 team ran the ball well, but you have to have the vertical passing game. Like this all doesn't, like you can't get to where it needs to be without the vertical passing game. So now that is back, like I've written, and we saw, you mentioned, Dante Thornton is just a game changer. He has 6 TDs on 25 catches this year. Like he is just a game changer for Tennessee. And without him in this game, I don't know if Tennessee gets back in this game. He 1 for 86, 1 for 28. He's important in a lot of ways, and part of it is in that Jalen Hyatt thing where he doesn't need to be targeted a bunch. You just need to give him 4 targets. If he brings in 2 of them, guess what? His average time, he's going to do something with the ball. Like he is just so good in space, and he's so good after the catch that good things happen when Dante Thornton is in the game and Dante Thornton gets the ball. So I think that is it's just amazing. If you look at Tennessee's 2 losses this year, the only 2 games Tennessee's lost, the receivers average less than 10 yards per reception in those games. Against
Dante Thornton, 25.9 yards per catch on the season.
Yeah, it's just, he's incredible. Like he's right there in the big play stratosphere of Ryan Williams and Trey Harris and company. Like he's a game changer for Tennessee. When he makes plays in the game,
he's a game changer. Let's just bump the brakes.
He is a game changer in that way. Like the stats speak for themselves. When he gets the ball, good things happen. And Dante Thornton has been Tennessee's best receiver all season long. And you saw why, again, he bailed out Tennessee in a way with these big plays and getting him out of a hole that some of it, the offense dug for themselves. Some of it was obviously the kick return, this and the other. But Tennessee deserves credit. So Tennessee now has won 10 games, regular season games, 2 of the last 3 years. This hasn't happened since 2001 and 2003 under Fulmer. Heupel had, like, this was a huge opportunity for Heupel, and we talked about it in our preview show, like why this is such a big game for this program. Everything's right in front of you. Like this is a great way to end the year while all these other teams have fallen all around you playing big games. All you have is UTEP and Vanderbilt. You should be able to win both these games and make it into the CFP. everything's aligned really nicely for you here. And they did it. Heupel deserves credit for, hey, weathering the storm. This was 14-0 on the road against a team that beat Alabama at home. Like, this could have gone the way it went against South Carolina 2 years ago. This could have been a situation where Tennessee doesn't get up off the mat and just bounce back. Guess what? Nico Yamayava played his best game of the year. Like, Nico was throwing darts all throughout this game. This was, outside the interception, this was the best 4 straight quarters of football Nico has played all year long. And like I said, the last 20 quarters of Nico has been a really good quarterback. Nico is going to be just fine. Nico is playing really, really good football. He ran the ball extremely well. He had 7 yards to carry in this game. He had several design runs that were really good. I was extremely impressed with the way Nico played in this football game. And look, the Tennessee defense shut out Vanderbilt in the second and third quarter. They came back and bounced back from what happened in Athens 2 weeks ago. I thought they controlled a lot of this game and really limited what Diego Pavia and company could do. And look, Tennessee did what they had to do, but Heupel deserves a lot of credit for, hey, people wondered how this was going to go. He's in the playoff in year 4, first time, won 30 games now in 3 years at Tennessee. And based on where Tennessee's been the last 10 and really where they've been the last 20, it's a really good spot to be in. So kudos to Heupel and company, because now we'll see if they host. We'll get into why or why not they should here a little bit later. But I don't know. By and large, Matt Green, Tennessee in the playoff and did what they needed to do here.
See, I respect your take from this game, and it's obviously they took care of business, bounced back in a rival, especially a rivalry game. This doesn't even feel like a rivalry game. It is, but it isn't. Like, it doesn't even feel like as big of a game as Georgia Tech. That's something that, Georgia Tech used to win championships and used to compete with Georgia on the recruiting trail and stuff. I don't know that Vanderbilt's ever been there at any time, really competing with Tennessee. But
maybe a little bit of the James Franklin years.
Yeah, something like small sample size like that. But it ultimately, Tennessee's they're on a different program than Vanderbilt. So I still, this is the best Vanderbilt team we've seen in years, but I'm still it's Vanderbilt, right? So I can't all of a sudden say Tennessee's figured things out and this is the team. I think for this team to make noise in the playoffs, they're going to have to play better than we've seen them play to this point. They're going to have to do something they haven't done to this point. And I think you can make that case for a lot of teams. Georgia, you probably can't drop a shit ton of passes, and you probably can't have an inept run game if you're going to make noise in the playoffs, right? So there's teams that have those things. You're going to have to do some things a little better than you've done. There's a lot of flawed teams out there. But I think Tennessee is one of those. This is a good win. But if they actually make noise in the playoffs, it's going to be because they're playing better than we've seen them all season. Because this passing offense, this passing game has just still been, a lot to be desired. This is the most points they've scored in an SEC game all year, right? 36 and 33 against Vanderbilt and Mississippi State. Vanderbilt isn't down there or Mississippi State where they usually are, but this offense still has a lot to prove, I think, through 12 games this season. And like I was saying, kind of hating, obviously it's a really good team. They're ranked number 7 right now, but they haven't actually accomplished anything that they hadn't previously done. Now they get to decide it on the field. And maybe they're one of those teams that benefits from this the most because they have a first-year starting quarterback that as the season's gone along, maybe by the time we get to December, he is ready for the big time. Because in terms of teams expecting something they haven't seen from their team through 12 games, Tennessee is one that can more reasonably expect, this quarterback, he was a 5-star for a reason. We've seen, times where he's looked really good and thrown really good balls. So this could be the time he takes the step, but they are going to have to take a step if they're going to make some noise in the playoff.
I think it's there, and you're seeing the recipe. Dylan Sampson's going to be good. I think Mike Matthews has a touchdown in this game. He got a lot of run, 5-star freshman. He's coming on a little bit. Chris Brazzell had a couple big catches in this game. So I'm not saying the offense is going to be 2022 all of a sudden, but I do think, to your point, this is the highest SEC turnout here points-wise, and just watching the game as someone who's watched all these games, watched them back the next day, this was the best the offense has looked for 4 quarters, where it's all of it. And that was the broader point about Sampson is if Sampson and Kitzelman have been great stories for Tennessee this year, But for Tennessee to ultimately get where they need to go, like, it has to be the downfield stuff. It has to be the explosive plays, because if you don't have the explosive plays, all that stuff doesn't matter, because you can't win it all playing that way. You can win some big games. You can go to Oklahoma and win. You can be in some games and steal some games there. But if you actually want to win a national title, if you want to beat Georgia on the road in Athens, those plays that Dante Thornton made in the first half against Vanderbilt on the road, that had to happen in Athens. And that didn't happen. So you didn't win. Like, that is part of it. You saw Georgia Tech. Like, the way Georgia Tech plays, Tennessee can't play that way. Tennessee can't run their very triple option and stuff and give Georgia problems that way. So beat Georgia the way, or beat Ohio State if that's who they get matched up. If they, or Oregon, whatever. If they're going to, Happy Valley and Penn State, if they're going to do that, the only way to do that is Dante Thornton, Chris Brazzell, and Squirrel White, Chaz Nimrod. They have to make plays down the field. If those explosive plays don't pop up, and we're not asking for 5 to 7 a game. You need 2 to 3. You need 2 to 3 that break open, that give the offense some breathing room, give Nico some confidence, give the offense confidence, and scare the defense enough that, like, this is still possible, and that Tennessee has the guys outside that scare you and make this offense feel as complete as it did in 2022.
Could you imagine if I told you, win a time machine back to August, and told you Dylan Sampson's going to have 1,400, almost 1,500 yards rushing and 22 touchdowns, and Tennessee's going to have, like, the number 1 scoring defense in the SEC? Can you imagine how good you would have thought? You would have thought this was a 13-0 number 1 team in the country. Like, remember what the preseason talk about Nico was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you got that type of running game and that kind of defense,
well, that means the running game
would
wouldn't be that way, though. The running game wouldn't be that way if Nico was having a Heisman year all throughout.
I mean, the numbers, you can still have a 1,400-yard rusher and have an explosive pass game.
They were the second half stuff was that was Dylan Sampson save us.
You saw, like, Najee Harris, like, with Alabama in 2020. Like,
I'm saying Dylan Sampson's numbers would still be good, but they would not be what they are right now.
I don't know. I think regardless, you can have a 3-headed monster with an elite passing game, elite running game, like elite receiver. Yeah. You know, you can.
Tennessee hasn't had a 3-headed monster though. They've had just the Dylan Sampson show.
No, I'm just saying teams have done it. Like, you can have a big time stats guy at quarterback, running back, and receiver. Like,
Tennessee did it in 22.
Alabama in 2020 arguably should have had, 3 Heisman finalists on their roster that year. Like, if I would have just told you that their running game would have been that good, I don't think there's a Tennessee fan in the world that would have thought they had any losses, because, I mean, Nico was thought to be the best quarterback in the country.
Well, I would still think the Georgia one until I see it to believe it on that in that regard. But I also would say, like, I don't think the best version of this team is when they're run first, or when they're running. If their running game is the first thing you think about with this offense, or the running back is the first thing you think about this offense, then I don't think
you
the
need
offense
to forget about the running back, and then boom,
yes,
right up the middle for 40 yards.
Correct. That is what I think is the best version of the Tennessee offense.
I hear you.
But that's, again, Dylan Sampson, great season. He's been great.
So you're telling me if I would have told you Dylan Sampson had like 1,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, and y'all have the number 1 scoring defense in the SEC, you're like 10-2. That's what you're. That's what
I would have said the offense isn't having the kind of year. I would say the passing game is clearly not very good then.
What? Just because you have a 1,400-yard rusher, that means your passing game can't be good?
I think that would be a problem. Yes. Dylan Sampson's have you seen how many more carries he's had than just even Jalen Wright last year? Like, it's just, let me pull up the 2022.
No, that's fair.
Let me pull up the rushing offense for 2022. So,
but
Tennessee
he could also, if the passing game was elite, he could also have.
They were 26th. So Tennessee was 26th in rushing nationally in 2022, and that's more of where you want to be. You want to be somewhere closer to that top 20.
But if he had 1,400 yards and their passing game is good, then maybe he's averaging 7.5 yards a carry, and he doesn't have as many carries. But so he's
averaging close to that right now. He's averaging over 5 yards a carry right now on a bunch of carries.
That's what I'm saying. He's at 5.8 on the season. Yeah. If he was at like 7.5, like, he could have that on however many less carries. Like, You're just telling me if I told you he had 1,500 yards rushing, that your first thing would have been negative?
I would have.
It's not any good then.
I would have thought that means the passing game had problems. Yes, that's where my mind would go first.
Interesting.
Because I think the best version, like I said, to put a bow on it, the vertical passing game has to be a part of it, and that has to be the biggest. That has to be the big play threat for. That's what gets this all moving in the right direction, and then the rushing attack.
See, but you're approaching this from how Tennessee has played this season. There's not.
I mean,
really
they played it last year this way too. Jalen Wright was the show last year.
You got to remember how you people think, you Tennessee people. Y'all think this Heupel offense is going to be elite every single year. Like there's a notion that last year Joe Milton was just so bad. There's a reason that was the down. Like coming into the season, it's Heupel as an offense. Heupel is a genius. Like this offense is just going to be go, go, go. People kind of still talk about it, even though this offense has had its struggles. Like no one should really think this offense is good, to be honest. Like they average like 23 points a game in SEC play or something this year. But it's the fact that Nico is a 5-star and Heupel's offense is like a cheat code that people are kind of still assuming it's going to come. And it could potentially come. I'm not ruling it out. But to this point, it hasn't really been there. And I think it's the Heupel reputation and all that makes people think it's going to be there. But I mean, so before the season, there was no questioning how good this offense was going to be, as far as I'm concerned. Like, and especially with how high the ceiling was potentially for Nico as well. I don't know. That's shocking to me that you would be disappointed by that. But it's a hypothetical.
It's not even really disappointing because they just went 10-2 playing that way. So it's not even that I'm disappointed. It's just more of like, that's where my mind would go. Is I've seen both sides of this. And I think I don't know. I think in a perfect world, you want a trio. Because I still worry about the tread on Dylan Sampson's tires now for a playoff run here. And where he's at. I always keep Kerryon Johnson in 2016 in the back of my mind for Auburn down the stretch. And I think part of the appeal, I mean, there's a reason NFL teams, they all have trios of backs. They all like to rotate. Georgia rotates. Like there is something, like there is a strong part of me that's like the rotation's the way to go. Like if you can afford to rotate, and I mean, I think there would have been more rotation if Cam Seldon doesn't get hurt early on this spring, and he's not really a factor all year long, which was not something that
Georgia hasn't had as good of a running game. Georgia hasn't had as good of a running game, as good of a running back in like 5, 6, 7 years as Dylan Sampson, though. If you have a guy that good, I mean, I think you just keep feeding him.
Yeah, but I also think you kept feeding him because you didn't trust your offensive line. You didn't trust your receivers. You didn't trust your vertical passing game. You didn't trust a lot of stuff. And Dylan was able to do all that. And that's the thing, is Dylan was able to pick up the slack. Dylan was able to step up when everything around him at times this year was not working offensively. Like it'd be the quarterback one week, it'd be the offensive line one week, it'd be the receivers. But the running game and Dylan Sampson, and again, the consistency and the durability of Dylan Sampson has been the story of this Tennessee offense this year. It's why he should have been a finalist for the Doak Award this year. Dylan Sampson, best season of any Vol running back in the 21st century. But for Tennessee's offense to really feel like it's clicking, to be higher up in the rankings, to everything else, it's still the quarterback. This is still a quarterback-driven sport. It's still a offense that a quarterback operating at a high level like Hendon Hooker did in 2022 and in the back half of the 2021 season is a championship level humming offense. We just didn't see that 2022 team with this kind of defense.
Who's that list of best Tennessee running back seasons in the 21st century? Do you have any?
I mean, it's him. It's pop off? Travis Stevens. Alvin Kamara had one.
Kamara. Arian Foster, did he have a big season?
I don't think he had like his number. I would have to go back and look at if he actually had like a crazy number season. But Eric Gray, sneaky had before he transferred one of those pro years. He had some pretty good.
I know Montario Hardesty was always a guy.
Montario Hardesty,
he had
absolutely.
I don't know if he had a big. He may have had 1,000-yard season, maybe. I'll leave you with this, sir. This is the last thing I'll say. Najee Harris in 2020 had 1,466 yards, 26 touchdowns. And they still had a quarterback that threw for 4,500 yards, 40 touchdowns, and the receiver that won the Heisman. So I'm just saying, if I would have heard Dylan Sampson had 1,400 yards rushing, I'm thinking, damn, Tennessee. And this is the number 1 ranked defense in the SEC. I'm thinking, damn, this Tennessee team is the number 1 team in the country. And I got to sit through talking to Chase Thomas twice a week. But I don't know. Now they're going to be like, what, the 7 seed, 8, 9 seed?
We'll see.
We shall see.
They should be an 8 seed, but we'll see if the committee does the right thing. I think they should be an 8 seed, but it's going to come down to Ohio State or Tennessee. I think they're locked is the way I see the rankings. But we'll get into it in a second here, Matt Green. Friday night, though, the reason I wasn't texting you is, I don't have my phone around me during games a lot. I keep my phone away so I can take notes and all that. But I was back in Atlanta watching the game surrounded by Georgia fans. And Georgia Tech, we were watching that as a family, and I'm just trying to keep my mind off Tennessee Vanderbilt 12 hours later. But what say you in one of the craziest Georgia games I've watched from start to finish?
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.